Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. The day the Empire learned to fear humanity. One warning. The arrival, the endless void of space stretched before the mighty Velar Empire's fleet. Dozens of warships, sleek and silver, moved like silent predators toward their target, a small blue-green planet on the edge of the galaxy. Vega Prime Commander Taurus, a seasoned Velar warrior, stood at the bridge of his battleship, the Dreadwing. He looked at the holographic display before him, watching as the planet's surface rotated slowly. A small human colony sat near the northern hemisphere, its lights flickering in the dark. "Such a fragile world," he muttered. Taurus had crushed hundreds of civilizations before. The Velar Empire never lost. They had ruled the galaxy for centuries, expanding their empire, enslaving weaker species, and destroying those who resisted. And now it was the humans' turn. A young officer approached, bowing slightly. "Commander, we have scanned the planet. Their defenses are weak. Their fleet is nowhere in sight." Taurus smirked just as he expected. Humans were primitive creatures. He had read the reports. Barely a century ago, they were still fighting wars with bullets and bombs on their own planet. How could they possibly stand against the Velar Armada? He turned to his communications officer. "Open a channel." A second later, the speakers crackled. A human face appeared on the main screen, a woman in a dark uniform, calm, too calm. Taurus grinned, showing his sharp, predatory teeth. "You are in violation of Imperial law. By order of the Velar Dominion, your colony will be annexed. Surrender and your people will be spared. Resist and you will be." The human woman cut him off. "This is your only warning. Leave now or be destroyed." The bridge fell silent. Taurus blinked. For a moment he thought he had misheard. Then he burst into laughter. His officers followed, their voices echoing through the command deck. This was absurd. A human, a species so weak they weren't even considered a threat, threatening the Velar Empire. Taurus wiped a tear from his eye. "You dare to threaten us? Do you even know who you are speaking to?" The woman didn't react. Her expression never changed. Cold, empty. A sinking feeling crawled up Taurus's spine. Something about her gaze was wrong. There was no fear, no desperation, just certainty. The transmission ended. "Commander," the officer at the sensor station spoke. "What are your orders?" Taurus growled. "Prepare the fleet. I want that colony destroyed." Alarm, warning. Multiple energy SA Gen HSDTT. The command deck shook violently as the ship's automated defense systems roared to life. Taurus spun around. "Report! What just happened?" The officer's face was pale. "Yes, sir, our forward fleet. It's gone." Taurus frowned. "What do you mean gone? How many ships?" The officer hesitated, then whispered, "All of them." A cold silence fell over the bridge. Taurus rushed to the main viewing screen, his stomach twisted. Out of the 12 Velar warships that had been leading the assault, nothing remained. No debris, no wreckage, just empty space. His hands clenched into fists. This had to be some kind of trick, maybe a cloaked enemy, maybe. "New contact detected," the officer shouted. Taurus turned to the screen just in time to see it. A single warship emerged from the darkness of space, moving with an eerie, unnatural grace. It was black. No lights, no markings, just a massive, silent shadow. Taurus felt his throat tighten. What is that?" The sensors struggled to scan it. The readings were impossible. One moment the ship appeared massive, larger than an entire city. The next, it barely existed, flickering in and out of detection like a phantom. The officer gulped. "Sir, it's a human warship." Taurus's mind screamed no. That was impossible. Humans didn't have this kind of technology, and yet there it was. It didn't open fire, it didn't broadcast any threats. It simply existed, and that was enough to send a chill through every Velar warrior. Taurus forced himself to stay calm. "Raise shields, prepare weapons. I want that ship destroyed." His officers obeyed, fingers moving across control panels. The Velar fleet locked onto the human vessel. Cannons hummed, plasma turrets charged. Then the lights flickered. For a moment everything went dark. Then the ship's alarms screamed again. We've lost all targeting systems. Taurus slammed his fists against the console. Fire manually. But nothing happened. The weapons were offline, the shields were down. The fleet's entire system was dead. Taurus's stomach twisted. The humans hadn't just disabled their weapons, they had disarmed the entire fleet in seconds. His breathing grew shallow. Impossible. Then the human ship finally spoke. A single message, cold, final. We warned you. Then the darkness swallowed the first Velar ship, and the slaughter began. The Velar Empire falls. Commander Talaris had never known fear. He had conquered countless worlds for the Velar Empire, crushed resistance before it could rise, and watched civilizations burn under the might of his war fleets. But now, for the first time in his life, he felt it. Fear. The human warship, a dark, shifting phantom in the void, had wiped out an entire Velar attack group in seconds. No weapons fired, no explosions, they simply vanished, and now it was watching them. A deathly silence filled the bridge of the Dreadwing. Every officer, every crew member sat frozen at their stations. No one spoke. No one moved, because the Velar fleet's weapons were dead. No shields, no targeting systems, no propulsion. They were completely vulnerable. Taurus's throat was dry. How had the humans done this? Their technology should have been inferior, they should have been easy prey, and yet here they were. A soft beeping sound broke the silence. Commander, the communications officer whispered, his voice trembling. We are receiving a transmission from the capital. Taurus inhaled sharply. He already knew what this was. The Velar Emperor himself was watching. On screen, Taurus ordered, forcing his voice to stay steady. A large hologram flickered to life. A tall, imposing figure stood before them, the Emperor of the Velar Dominion, Vorin the Unyielding. His golden armor gleamed, his piercing red eyes burning with anger. Taurus, the Emperor's voice rumbled. Explain yourself. Taurus swallowed hard. He had never seen the Emperor look so furious. My lord, he began, choosing his words carefully. We encountered unexpected resistance. The humans have, he hesitated, advanced technology. The Emperor narrowed his eyes. And what do you mean by unexpected resistance? Taurus's claws clenched at his sides. Their warship disabled our fleet in an instant. Our weapons do not work. Our systems are dead. A long silence followed. Then the Emperor laughed. It was a deep, echoing sound filled with mockery. The officers on the bridge shifted uncomfortably. You tell me, the Emperor sneered, that a single human warship has crippled the Velar fleet. Taurus lowered his gaze. Yes, my lord. The Emperor shook his head. Pathetic. His gaze sharpened. You will fire everything you have. I do not care if your targeting systems are down. Overload your cannons if you must. I want that ship reduced to dust. Taurus hesitated. This was not just another enemy. He could feel it. Something about the humans was different, but he could not disobey. As you command, my lord. The hologram vanished. Taurus exhaled. He turned to his officers. Prepare to fire manually. Charge all remaining plasma batteries. His crew hesitated. Some of them looked at each other, fear flickering in their eyes. But they obeyed. A hum filled the ship as what little power remained was redirected to the weapons. The Velar fleet, dozens of mighty warships, prepared to fire everything they had. Taurus turned back to the viewing screen. The human warship still hovered in the void, completely motionless. It didn't move. It didn't attack. It was waiting. Taurus took a deep breath. He raised his arm. Fire. The bridge lights flickered as plasma cannons overloaded, discharging their full power. Massive beams of blue energy shot toward the human vessel. Taurus clenched his fists. Let's see how strong you really are. Then something impossible happened. The plasma beams bent right before impact. The energy curved away, spiraling into nothingness. Taurus's eyes widened. What? The officers stared in horror. It was not a shield. It was not armor. The human ship had simply denied reality, as if physics itself had decided that the Velar Empire was no longer allowed to fight back. Taurus took a step back. Then the human warship spoke. No transmission, no sound. A single message appeared on every screen in every Velar language. "We warned you." Taurus barely had time to react. The human warship fired, but there was no explosion, no blinding beam of energy, just darkness. A pulse of pure black energy rippled outward. The moment it touched the first Velar warship, the ship vanished. No debris, no wreckage, just gone. One by one, the Velar ships disappeared, consumed by the void. Taurus screamed as his ship was the last to be swallowed. Then silence. The mighty Velar fleet was no more. The first strike. The Velar armada was gone, not destroyed, not scattered, erased. And yet the Vetter, a small Velar scout ship, survived. Commander Rathus watched in horror from the shadows of a distant asteroid field. His ship had arrived late, trailing behind the fleet to monitor the invasion from a safe distance. Now he wished he had never come. The human warship, a massive black phantom, hovered in space, completely still. It did not pursue the remaining Velar vessels. It did not send any messages. It simply existed, and that was terrifying enough. "Commander," a voice trembled behind him. It was his communications officer, Javel. "Go ahead," Rathus said, barely keeping his voice steady. Javel gulped. "We have received a message from the Emperor. He demands an update on the battle." Rathus turned to him slowly. "An update?" His voice was hollow. How could he explain what he had just witnessed? How could he tell the Emperor that an entire Velar battle fleet, the strongest in the Empire, had been wiped from existence in seconds? He took a deep breath. "Send the message." Javel nodded and pressed a few controls. The main screen flickered to life, and once again Emperor Vortin appeared. But this time the Emperor's confidence was gone. His red eyes were sharp, his lips pressed into a thin line. He had expected victory. Now he was waiting for an explanation. "Rathus," the Emperor said coldly, "where is the fleet?" Rathus swallowed hard. How could he answer that? My lord, they are gone." The Emperor's expression did not change. "Gone." Rathus forced himself to speak. "The humans, they erased them, no wreckage, no remains, they simply vanished." The Emperor's fingers tightened around the golden armrest of his throne. The sound of metal cracking filled the air. He did not believe it. "I warned Taurus," the Emperor muttered, almost to himself. "The humans were an unknown factor, and now we know." Rathus hesitated. "My lord, what are your orders?" The Emperor leaned forward, his red eyes glowing. "Rally the Second Armada." Rathus's blood ran cold. The Second Armada. That was every warship in the Velar Empire. The Emperor was preparing for total war. Rathus knew that meant only one thing. The Velar Dominion was afraid. The transmission ended. Silence filled the command deck. Javel swallowed. "Commander, should we leave?" Rathus turned back to the screen. The human warship was still there. It had not moved, not attacked. It had sent a message, a warning, and Talaris had ignored it. Rathus knew the Empire was making the same mistake. "We run," he whispered, "and we pray." Meanwhile, on the human flagship Revenant, Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of the U.S. Revenant, watching as the last of the Velar ships vanished into nothing. The battle had been short, if he could even call it a battle. The Velar had expected a primitive species. They had come for war. They had come to dominate. But they had been too late. Humanity had evolved. For 100 years, Earth had been silent. The galactic powers had assumed they were weak, fractured, but that silence had been preparation. And now the universe would understand. Kane turned to his communications officer. "Send a message." The officer nodded, waiting for the command. Kane's voice was calm, controlled, final. "To the Velar Empire, you did not listen. You thought you were gods, now you will learn the truth. We are the storm, and we are coming." The chase begins. The Velar home world, Korn Prime, was in chaos. Inside the Imperial War Chambers, the High Council, dozens of the most powerful Velar rulers argued among themselves. Holograms of burning fleets and lost warships flickered in the air, showing the unthinkable. The entire First Armada was gone. No survivors, no debris, nothing left. At the center of the chamber, Emperor Vortin sat motionless, his claws tapping against his throne, His red eyes burned with cold fury. For the first time in Velar history, the Empire had been challenged. For the first time, the Velar were afraid. A warlord slammed his fist on the table. The humans must have used a forbidden weapon, some kind of black hole device. This is not possible. Another counselor growled. Our fleets are the strongest in the galaxy. The humans cannot have surpassed us. Vorton silenced them with a single glance. He knew the truth. This was not about weapons, it was something worse. The humans had technology beyond understanding. The Velar had assumed they were weak, primitive, but now the Empire was facing extinction. Vorton turned toward the war marshal, his most trusted general. How many warships remain? The war marshal's voice was grim. We have mobilized the Second Armada, over 3,000 warships, the largest fleet ever assembled. Vorton's claws tightened. Then we will burn their home world to ash. Meanwhile, in deep space, Admiral Kine stood on the bridge of the U.S. Revenant, watching the incoming reports. The Velar have taken the bait. They're mobilizing their entire fleet, his tactical officer reported. Thousands of warships, they're preparing a direct strike against Earth. Kane smirked, predictable. The Velar were arrogant creatures. They still fought in primitive terms, more ships, more firepower. They believed victory came from overwhelming force. But they still didn't understand. Humanity had already won. Kane turned to his officers. Deploy the silent hunters. A ripple ran through space. From the shadows, hundreds of human stealth warships uncloaked, silent, invisible, waiting. The Second Armada had no idea. They thought they were the hunters. They were about to learn they were the prey. The battle begins. The Velar Second Armada jumped into deep space, moving toward the human home system. The fleet stretched across the void, minus 3,000 warships, enough to shatter a solar system. Inside the command ship, Dread Tyrant, Admiral Xaver watched his fleet with pride. The humans got lucky once, Xaver growled. This time they will burn. Then the lights flickered. Xaver frowned. What was that? The ship's alarm screamed to life. The sensor officer gasped. Sir, we are detecting. A dark shadow appeared outside the viewport. It wasn't a ship, it was something else. Xaver's blood ran cold. What is that? The shadow moved. The nearest Velar warship vanished. No explosion, no fire, no debris, just gone. The silent hunters had struck. Xaver screamed. All ships fire, fire at anything you see. The Velar fleet panicked. They unleashed everything, plasma cannons, energy torpedoes, antimatter warheads, but there was nothing to hit. The silent hunters moved like ghosts, flickering in and out of detection. One by one, the Velar warships disappeared. Their great Second Armada, the strongest force in the galaxy, was being erased, and the humans never even spoke a word. The final message. Admiral Kane watched from the Revenant, his arms crossed. They're breaking, his officer reported. The Velar are retreating. Kane nodded. Send them a final message. A transmission was sent to the Dread Tyrant, where Admiral Xaver stood shaking, his fleet falling apart around him. A single sentence appeared on every Velar screen. We told you to run. Xaver's soul shattered. The Velar Empire was doomed. The Emperor's nightmare. The Velar Second Armada, the greatest fleet in their history, was gone, not defeated, erased. The survivors, the few who managed to flee, arrived back at Corin Prime in a panic. Velar warships that had once been symbols of conquest now drifted into the atmosphere like wounded animals. Inside the Imperial war chambers, Emperor Vorton the Unyielding watched in horrified silence. The High Council sat frozen, their pride shattered. Their empire, the unbreakable, unstoppable Velar Dominion, had just suffered the worst defeat in recorded history. Not to an ancient rival, not to a superior race, to humans. Vorton's hands trembled. How had this happened? His empire had ruled for centuries. His fleets had crushed rebellions before they could begin. No species had ever dared to stand against the Velar Dominion, and now, in a matter of days, it was falling apart. His red eyes flickered to Admiral Xaver, one of the only survivors of the Second Armada. The Admiral stood before the throne, his face pale, his body trembling. Xaver dropped to his knees. "My lord," he whispered, voice shaking, "we are lost." The High Council erupted into chaos. "This cannot be happening," a warlord roared. "They must have an unknown super weapon." Vorton raised his hand and the chamber fell into silence. His voice was low, cold. "Tell me, Admiral Xaver," he said. "What did you see?" Xaver swallowed hard. "Their ships. They were not normal, my lord." His voice broke. "They were shadows, ghosts. We could not hit them. We could not stop them." The council murmured in disbelief. "They ignored our strongest weapons," Xaver continued. His fingers dug into his own arms. "They moved through space like they were not bound by the laws of reality." He looked up at the Emperor, his eyes full of something Vorton had never seen before. Not fear, despair. "My lord," Xaver whispered, "we are fighting against something we do not understand." The words sent a chill through the room. The Velar had never feared anyone, but this was not war. This was annihilation. The sky turns black. The warning alarm screamed. A trembling officer ran into the chambers, gasping for breath. "My lord, we have incoming ships." Vorton stood slowly. "How many?" The officer's voice broke. "Just one." The council blinked. "One." The massive holographic display in the center of the chamber flickered to life and the room fell silent. It was here. The human warship, not a fleet, not an armada, just one ship, yet it cast a shadow so large it blocked out the sun. Vorton stepped closer to the display, staring at the massive black warship hovering over Coron Prime. It did not move. It did not fire. It simply waited. A single message appeared on every Velar screen. "This is your final warning." Vorton clenched his fists. His empire had never surrendered, but for the first time he considered it. The final warning. The Velar High Council sat in stunned silence. For centuries, they had been the lords of the galaxy, ruling through fear and power. Civilizations bowed before them, and no one dared to resist. But now, a single human warship hovered over Coron Prime, blocking out the sun, casting a shadow over their greatest cities. And it had sent only 5 words. "This is your final warning." The Emperor's fingers trembled on the golden armrests of his throne. His red eyes burned with frustration, with disbelief. How had it come to this? The humans hadn't sent an invasion force. They hadn't negotiated. They hadn't even bothered to demand surrender. They had simply arrived, and everything the Velar had built was crumbling before them. The last stand of the Velar. Across the planet, Velar warships scrambled into the sky. Fighters, battleships, and planetary defense platforms took aim at the human vessel. Grand Admiral Xaver, still shaking from his last battle, stood on the command deck of the Warbringer, his last operational flagship. "My lord," a desperate officer spoke, "should we attack?" Xaver hesitated. Attacking the humans had already cost them 2 entire fleets, and yet what choice did they have? He clenched his fists. "We fire everything." The command spread across the entire Velar fleet. Thousands of cannons charged. Missiles locked onto the massive human warship. The planetary defense grid glowed with power. Xaver took one last deep breath. "Then fire," the human response. The sky erupted with light. Tens of thousands of energy blasts, plasma rounds, and hyper missiles launched toward the human dreadnought. Every weapon the Velar had. Every last defense. For the briefest moment, Xaver felt hope. No ship could survive this. Then something impossible happened. The weapons never reached the target, not because of shields, not because of countermeasures. The attack simply vanished. One moment, thousands of beams and missiles rushed toward their target. The next, they were gone. No explosion, no deflection, just erased. Xaver's breath hitched. His mind screamed, "This is not possible," but it was. A deathly silence spread across the Velar fleet. Xaver felt every eye turned toward him, because now they'd all understood. The humans weren't fighting them. The humans were deciding whether they deserved to exist. The final message. A deep, powerful hum filled the atmosphere. The human dreadnought moved for the first time. Slowly, effortlessly, like a god walking through a field of insects. A new message appeared on every Velar screen in every language of the Empire. A final declaration. The war is over. The Velar Empire is no more. The words were absolute, final. Xaver's hands shook violently. What does that mean? An officer whispered. Then the human ship charged its main weapon. A sphere of black energy gathered at its core, pulsing like a dying star. It expanded, crackling with power. Xaver knew what was about to happen. They all did. And for the first time in Velar history, a supreme commander gave an order that had never been spoken before. Retreat. Not tactical repositioning, not strategic fallback. True, unconditional retreat. The mighty Velar Dominion was abandoning its home world. The fleet turned, warships fled in every direction. They left their cities, their people, their emperor. They had no choice. Because in that moment they knew humanity had already won. The end of the Velar Empire. The Velar fleet fled like vermin scurrying from a burning world. They abandoned Corran Prime, their home, their legacy, their empire. For centuries they had ruled the stars. They had enslaved worlds, crushed rebellions, burned civilizations to the ground. And now they were running. The mighty Velar Dominion, once the most feared force in the galaxy, was no more. The last words of an emperor. From the grand balcony of his palace, Emperor Vortin watched the skies turn black. His great fleet, the pride of his people, was retreating, vanishing into hyperspace, leaving him behind, abandoned. Beneath him, the streets of Corran Prime were in chaos. Millions of Velar citizens looked up at the sky, their faces filled with horror, watching the end of their world unfold above them. The human warship remained motionless, like a silent god waiting for judgment. A deep hum vibrated through the atmosphere. The ground shook. The air crackled with energy. And then, for the first time in his life, Vortin the Unyielding knelt. He lowered his head, his claws gripped the cold marble floor, and he spoke his final words. Mercy. The human decision. Aboard the U.S. Revenant, Admiral Kane watched in silence. The entire Velar civilization, its rulers, its people, its soldiers, was at his mercy. The war had never been a war. It had been an execution. Kane exhaled. He turned to his crew. What is the status of the Velar fleet? Scattered, sir, the tactical officer responded. They have no central command anymore. They are no longer an empire, just survivors running for their lives. The Velar Dominion was finished. Kane could end them with a single command, destroy the planet, burn their cities, erase them from history. He could, but he wouldn't, because humanity was not like them. The final message. Across the Velar communication channels, a final message echoed. Not a demand, not a threat. A simple truth. This war is over. Do not return, do not rebuild. There will be no second warning. Then the U.S. Revenant vanished into hyperspace, leaving Corran Prime alive but forever broken. Epilogue, a galaxy changed forever. The news spread across the stars like wildfire. The Velar Empire was gone. The rulers who once dominated the galaxy were now refugees, scattered, leaderless, lost. And the galaxy learned the truth. Humanity had returned, not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as a force that could not be stopped. And every empire, every warlord, every species in the galaxy understood one undeniable fact. Never challenge humanity again, because if you do, you won't get a second warning.